You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. Welcome everyone to a very special highlights episode of What's That Sound podcast. My name is Stu Watts. Today we're going to be going through some of the best parts of the first 10 episodes of What's That Sound. Some great advice, information, going through sessions, going through favorite plugins, going through live sound, going through studio recordings, all sorts of stuff. It's a really cool episode and I can't wait to get into it. But before we do, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. First of all, just a reminder that this podcast is made independently. I record, edit it all myself. I've had a little bit of help from Clacker with the content, art, and things like that. But apart from that, it's all me. It's all available for free. But if you do like the content and want to support the podcast, you can go to paypal.me/whatsthatsound and you can give us a little donation if you're so inclined. The other thing is I'm launching a first for me. I'm launching a sample pack. It's called Slammed. It's got 200 samples, mostly drum samples, some effects samples. It's very exciting for me. I've never done anything like this before. Here is the little clip that I've put together for it. Well, there it is. What did you think? I think it's pretty awesome. Once again, 200 samples, mostly drums samples. There's some effect samples in there. All of these samples are taken directly from sessions that I've been involved in, either recording, mixing, taken from sessions from March 2019 up until June this year, 2022. So whole lot of different sessions. There's, hard rock samples, there's soft rock samples, there's weird effects. It's crazy. I'm really proud of it. It is available for free on Bandcamp. You can pay some money to donate to me if you would like. Once again, these are all taken from sessions that I did over time. And yeah, I've put a little bit of hard work into putting this together, compiling it. But if you want it for free, it's yours. So with that out of the way, here is a clip from episode 1. So episode 1 was with JUJO. And we talk about troubleshooting difficulties in sessions, the importance of taking breaks, but also we go into a little bit of a conversation about the importance of putting effort into your release, into the marketing, into your socials. So here it is, the first clip for today with JUJO from episode 1. How do you navigate through that, like dealing with adversity? Like if you're in a session and it feels really uncomfortable, like what do you do? Because I think a lot of people would want to know about that.
Well, the best thing to do is like have heaps of breaks. Mm-hmm. Like, like I have a lot of people that like enjoy like playing basketball or, having a cigarette or other type of cigarettes to keep, like help them chill and keep calm but get out of the room, listen to other music. Mm-hmm. Chill out, talk.
Yep.
But if you're also like halfway through a project, it's on you as well to say, "Hey, we're nearly there. Mm-hmm. Look, let's go."
Yep.
Because all it takes is that one break, and the talent will come back in and be like, "You know what, man? Like today was a good day. I got to go." Like they make up some bullshit excuses. Mm-hmm. I've had people say, "I got to leave at 4." And then at 3:30 we're buzzing, yeah? And like, I'm going to stay till 7. But, well, hold on. What happened to your dinner plans at 5 o'clock? Yeah, it's like that date thing. Yeah. Now they do the date thing.
Right,
guys and girls, right? oh, I'm meeting my friend at 5 for dinner.
It's like it's a backup. yeah. Like just in case.
Just
it sucks.
tell me, man. I got that much shit I got to do.
Yeah.
But respect, like people are thinking about that. See, they're really thinking about maybe if this don't work. So let's try and get them in that mood at the start. And if you ever have problems like recording and getting the actual idea down, either punch through it or allow for that to like grow. The second session might be the better, or the third session. You want to build a team and
You're right. You don't want a one and done. You don't want one song with a client. And you want to do like 10 tracks, man. You want to build that long-term rapport with them.
Sometimes it's the 6th track that is not the money, but it's the one that's going to be like the artist is going to be like, I'm growing from this. It's not the second. It's not the first.
So everyone's got to start somewhere as well. And that's an important thing is like, you know, everyone starts off not knowing as much. That's what a journey is. You start off, you only know a certain amount of things. You feel like you're learning. And then you get to a point, it's that Dunning-Kruger thing where it's like, you feel like you know heaps and then you realize you don't know shit. And you start from the start.
And it's great.
And then it gradually builds and it's good because you're right. You just have to push through sometimes where if you didn't have that grit and determination and you give up really easily on something, there is a good chance that you'll have that one and done relationship with a lot of different artists. And so you're right. Like, man, some songs just aren't going to vibe, but then you get to that 6th one, you're like, this is sick. Now we've found it. Now we know what to do next time.
And that's important. And there's also times with the one and done, it's not necessarily from the vibe in the room or the product. It's to do with the post stuff. It's to do with how the music's released. It's to do with the team behind that artist, which is it doesn't necessarily fall on the producer or the engineer. But that's what a producer engineer does. Is like we're like the uncles and the dads and the grandfathers and grandmothers.
We wear so many hats. We have to be a psychologist. We have to be the beat maker. We have to know what sounds we want. There's so many different things that you have to be able to do to be a successful producer.
Of course. And if
go on.
No, I'm saying if you put a week of work in mixing and recording, let's say a whole week, like every day, and that song comes out, and there's no plan behind it. There's no, the song is not even like, it's not connecting where it should be. You know, that's a letdown as well. So it's also like finding and educating the next stages of the release. It's not just making the love in the studio. It's also like what comes after that will propel the artist. So
for sure. Because it's as important to you as it is to them for it to be successful. Because the more people that hears your music as a producer, the more chance you're going to be able to work with someone else that hears it.
They're going to be like, yo, I heard that song you did with XYZ. Let's get in the room. And that's happened a lot after a song's come out. I've been hit up.
They're the best relationships, I think.
Yeah, because the person wants to work with you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there it is, the first clip from today with JUJO from episode 1 of What's That Sound. If you want to watch any of the full episodes, they're available to view on YouTube. They're on Spotify. If you just want to listen on Apple Podcasts, it's all available there for you. The first 10 episodes plus a bonus episode I did with Nicholas Di Lorenzo of Panorama Mastering. They're all there. Listen to them at your will. But this episode shall continue with just some of the best bits. So this is episode 2 with Jon Grace. In this clip, we talk about injecting your personal tastes into your music as a producer and the important conversations that you need to have in the pre-production stage. So let's get into it. Do you inject a lot of your personal musical interests into your productions, or 100%. Do you like to let the artist dictate what they want it to sound like?
Well, I 100% I dictate my own musical taste because I think that's kind of, part of the role a producer should play. This is a controversial opinion, but I don't really like Steve Albini and his philosophy of like, I'm just here to kind of capture just like, I don't want to make a documentary. I want to make a film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely inject personal taste in there, but it's always at the most part on that first kind of pre-pro chunk of time.
Right.
Because that then gives the artist the ability to veto it if they don't like it. It's one of those things as well where like if I make a suggestion or if a band member makes a suggestion about a change, one of the kind of guidelines I have is that you have to kind of justify it. You have to be able to explain why you think that should be the case, what it's serving in the narrative of the song. And so, yeah, I'll do that with my own personal taste of like, hey, this band did this kind of thing at this point. What if we tried a similar thing?
Yep.
And then on top of that, like, I mean, can get pretty loose with my use of EBO, which Smashing Pumpkins really kind of put into me.
Yeah. Look, it's all ear candy, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get to the nerdy plugins and sounds and that sort of thing, but let's stick more to the song. Does the song kind of tell you straight away how you want it to sound, or is it more of a discussion of, we think that, this song has, for example, a Smashing Pumpkins element to it. Let's try and make it sound like that. Or is it more like, let's let the song breathe and kind of find its own sonic characteristic?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big context dependent one. So sometimes, all of those things can happen in different sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're working with bands, is it mostly on like a single basis, or do you do EPs, albums?
Yeah, I mean, I do all of them. So, I mean, usually when I have like a first time client, it will be a single just to kind of get a feel for it. Yep. And then make sure that they're not making too much of an investment in something that might not be their flavor. But then, it's just one of those things where the more people come back, the longer the sessions seem to be.
The reason why I asked that there was because, sometimes when you have a bunch of different songs, that allows you to then delve into, okay, this is what this band sounds like. When you're getting a single, it can be sometimes difficult to know, am I doing this the right way? Am I giving this the sound that they...
Yeah. I think the conversation I have around that, and it might sound gross initially, but whenever I think about the kind of single in terms of like the band sound, I think of it as an advertisement for the band. And so that's one of the things I say in the pre-pro is like, so how do we want to present you to the world if this is like the 3.5 minutes we have? And so when it comes to, in terms of injecting musical taste or letting the song breathe or whatnot, like I in my veto process, I have a very extensive conversation about references. Both in terms of overall sound and then specific elements within sound. So, you'll get a band that will go, I really, really like At the Drive-In, but I really want like a Billie Eilish vocal over At the Drive-In. So things like that. And so within that, my favorite thing to do in terms of producing is to limit the palette as much as possible so that we're not spending hours on end chasing things that might not work, but rather go, all right, cool. So we need something for this chorus that fits into these references. We've got ideas A, B, C, and D. Let's try them all and see which is best. And then usually it's E, which is an amalgamation of all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really good exercise anyway. I think for people, again, that haven't been in the studio, that they potentially have these ideas of how it's going to go down. We're going to have so much time. We're going to be able to, mic up amps for a whole day, et cetera, et cetera. Where it's like, actually, let's just try and find something, a mold that your sound can fit into or the song can fit into, and let's really just hone in on that and try and get the best out of that exact small. We're using this one microphone for all the guitars, things like that. So I love it.
Like, I once had years ago I had I've forgotten the name, which is really bad. But it was a pop punk band, and the singer was like, I can't wait to shoot out every vocal mic in the studio. And I was like, man, you're in a pop punk band. Like, I'm not putting any ribbons near you. I'm not going to put you on like a fucking 57. Like, you're going into this.
Yeah, 100%. All right, episode 3 next with Tim Maxwell. This clip is about how you compile all of the different bits of information that you might get from school, from courses, from YouTube, and creating your own toolkit and using these bits of information your own way. So here it is.
So I actually went to school to do audio, and I couldn't afford Pro Tools. Oh, my Pro Tools wouldn't work on my old Mac. So I'm like, what am I meant to do? The only place I could use it was at this school. So that's when I was just like, fuck this. Got like a cracked version of Logic, and then just sat down and just taught myself that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, like as bad as it is when like, you know, you should always pay for shit and whatever. Everyone when they first start has cracked software, and it's like just it's all you can do when you're 19 years old and you can't afford shit. It's like,
Totally.
what am I going to do? Work for a whole year to buy one piece of software?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I know that's the easiest way to do it. But I guess like in saying that, it's cool because I went to like that school that taught you like this is the way. This is the only way. Use Pro Tools. Whatever meant to be doing this. Whatever meant like, you know, it was all just so short-sighted. And then you spend another 6-7 years on YouTube learning the fucking wrong thing. But the best thing is that you compile all of those ideas and make your own out of it and know what's right and what's wrong. You know, I've done like courses where people have been like, oh, make sure you're always just, you know, compressing it no more than minus 3 dB of gain reduction. It's just like, as soon as that shit goes into your head, it ruins your workflow. You need like out of any, like, I mean, a lot of people already say this, but it's all your fucking ears. That's all you need to do is listen to what you're doing and, you know, take what everyone says with a grain of salt, because it's not always going to be correct. And there is no surefire way of being like, no, that's the exact way to do something. Because at the end of the day, music, like mixing is so subjective that it's just like, as long as the artist and yourself is happy, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're 100% right. And I mean, you see it all the time, even professionals that have Grammys and fucking gold records and platinum records and stuff. I still see things where they're saying this is the way to do it. And it's like, it's the way to do it for you because that's how you do it. That doesn't mean that it's the right way for absolutely everyone. So
and not to mention like the quality of those tracks that have been recorded. In fucking huge, massive studios with and all budgets. The source material. Because I don't know if you've done the same thing, but I've like signed up to things where I've been able to get like professional stems, multi-tracks, and you don't have to really do anything. You just balance it. You're just like, well, that sounds fucking amazing. And that's, you know, why you see all those videos and you got like someone like CLA or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, so we're just going to do a boosted 8K there. And we're going to put this at 60. And it's like, listen to it. It sounds amazing. You try to do that to your tracks. You're just like, oh, it sounds shit. So bright and boomy and shit.
That's so funny. That's so funny. All right. I hope you're enjoying this highlights episode so far. This next clip is with Nicholas D. Lorenzo from Panorama Mastering. He is a mastering engineer. He's a mix engineer. But in this clip, he talks about the decisions that he makes when he receives a good mix as opposed to a not so good mix, and whether he's either light on the processing or heavy-handed, his decision process around that. So let's get into it. What I want to know is what decisions you make based on how much color you impart on a track. What are you listening for when you go, I need to push this harder or I need to keep this in its original state? It's probably a very difficult question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird question. Usually I don't want to be doing anything, to be honest. If it's a good mix, you know, I can usually sit back and be pretty transparent. And by transparent, I mean by measures of audio fidelity, which is introduction of any additional noise, distortion, change in tone, or change in phase. Noise being in harmonic forms of distortion, distortion being harmonic forms of distortion. But those are the four different sort of ways a signal can get manipulated or altered, which degrades the original signal. So if it's a good mix, I try and avoid using things like harmonic distortion or clipping and elements like that. Or even tone in terms of using too much EQ to reshape it. If it's a good mix, you know, soft with the compression, being very careful about how I gain stage in and out of certain processes, not to impart too many harmonics, especially when you're going out in the analog chain, and keep things open, clean, manually edit things down. Now, if it's a bad mix, that's where I'm a bit more inclined to get a little bit more heavy-handed because, and by bad mix, I mean typically the tone is out. So it's like, not enough low end or too much low end or too bright and too harsh or whatnot. Or it's too dynamic and like the section's just all over the place. Then I'll get a bit more heavy hand. I'll be like, okay, I might have to use some parallel compression here, smooth things out across the board, so it's a bit more even going from the verses to the choruses. The low end is like just super subby, but there's no real low mid, so I might, sort of tame that off and add a bit more harmonic saturation, so it translates better. So I'm listening to the mix itself, and if it's in a good pocket, I tend not to get heavy handed, because if it's, just it works.
Leave it as it is. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think, but you're aware of that decision of over the years of listening to thousands and thousands of songs, what a great mix sounds like and what needs work, and it's really cool to be like, no, you know what? I'm just going to leave this one because it sounds great as is, and that's probably like the ideal thing to come in for you. Or do you really enjoy working on stuff that doesn't sound that great and being I get to be creative here?
Because it's I think what it is when you have a really good mix, it is a challenge to make something loud. So have a really good mix, drive it. So it's loud, it's commercially loud, it plays back against other tracks. If it's a good mix, and not change the tone of it or change the way it's moving. So it's very difficult because it's so easy just to be a little bit too fast on the compressor and then it pumps. It's so easy to drive it a little bit too hard and then it starts to break up. It's like there's a fine line to balance there, and that's more of a tricky balancing act. It's super easy with a bad. Actually, I shouldn't say super easy. I'd say it is much more forgiving with a bad mix to start cranking distortion into it and reshaping it, because you've got that, you can be liberal in that sense to be like, oh, I'm going to add 2 decibels to the top end, and because it genuinely needs it. Whereas with a very good mix, it's like you can very quickly just throw things out of whack.
Yep. All right, next up, episode 5. Jackson McRae was my guest, and in this clip, we talk about a little bit of a difficult topic, negotiating money and figuring out what your worth is, and it delves into that as well as the importance of being able to get along with the people that you work with and how that will affect your future. Like, what about things in, you don't just work as a producer. What are some of the difficulties in the actual music industry that you find yourself having to navigate?
Yeah. I think probably kind of the easiest one, and maybe the one that comes straight to mind, is just negotiating money and just also understanding you have a worth. Like, I think it's very easy to sometimes feel like, oh, I'm playing music that, so if someone doesn't want to pay me, like, oh, that's all right. And like, it took me a while to figure out how to be like, no, I think I'm worth this much, and feel comfortable standing by that,
Yep.
How
did you sort of figure that out? How did you figure that process out?
I think just like talking to friends or, people that kind of do what you do, and like, that's why, I had, there's a guys in Sydney, Ross James and Dave Jenkins. And when I was kind of starting out, Ross especially, I was like, hey, Ross, like, I've been offered this tour. I don't know how much to charge. Like what? And Ross was like, well, what are the shows? Where are they? Cool, this amount. And I'm like, that seems ridiculous. And it's like, no, that's fair. So, in return, like, if anybody ever has stuff like that, I always, am open. That door's open for people to come talk to me about that kind of thing. By no means am I like the Bible on it or anything. Like, and different budgets work for different people. But also, at the end of the day, you just got to make sure that you're working with people you like to work with, and you're being treated nicely, but also you're treating people nicely as well. Like, especially with touring, there'll be so many better, like, drummers out there than me or whatever, but what you got to understand, it's like you play the drums or whatever for like maybe 2 hours that day, whereas you're hanging out in a bus or in a green room or on a plane for like the other 8 to 10. And that's kind of what you're getting paid for. So, like,
that's really,
regardless
really
if you're
important. I love that.
Yeah, regardless of if you're the best drummer or musician in the world or whatever, if you're not a nice person, you're not going to get work. Or if, you can't hang in a group or can't fit in with whoever's hired you, it's just not going to work out. So it's just a people game.
It really is. It's so much about not necessarily how you know, how many people you know or who knows you. It's about what people think of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And because there's obviously so many talented people out there in the world that can do what you do, if not as well, but better. You're absolutely
for
right.
sure.
It's like, why should they hire? Why would they want to work with someone that is not easy to work with just because they're a good musician? Yeah, they might look good on stage, but the rest of the, you know, 80% of the stuff that you're going to be doing with them, whether it's financial stuff, whether it's, you know, hanging out, whether it's other business things, marketing, all of those little things that make a difference to the end result. If the music is the most important thing, it's just not sustainable. It's just not really going to work.
Yeah, I kind of, and I've kind of spoken about this before, but I kind of always think of it like a triangle. It's like, and it can work for both when you take a gig and also when someone wants to hire you for a gig. And the triangle is like money, music, and like people. Mm-hmm. And like for taking a gig, like generally you want 2 out of the 3. So either you really like the music and you really like the people and you're right that the money's not so good, or you really like the people and you really like the money, but the music maybe isn't your thing, but because the people are so great, you don't really care, you know? Rarely I will go for a music and money gig where the people aren't great. That's just, I just can't be in that vibe if the people aren't great. But it also goes when people book you, right? Sure, you can be great at the music, but you know, you also got to be great at the you know, the people kind of thing. Otherwise, you know, they're just not going to pay you the money kind of vibe. You like it's all about being able to work with people.
Well, and it's that, people. and it's the future. It's the future that you're looking for as well. You know, they might pay you for that one gig and be like, all right, see you later, but then they're not going to book you again. That's really what's even more important is the future jobs.
Yeah, for sure.
You're just going to end up homeless. All right, we're getting through it. Next up, episode 6 is with Zak Knight. Zak Knight's a heavy music producer and engineer. He also works on some melodic trap stuff. But in this episode, we talked a lot about the importance of vocal production and how important the story is to the overall song. Even if that is an instrumental song, there's still a story arc that goes along with any song. So here we go. Zak Knight, episode 6.
I would argue that like the pre-production is besides vocal engineering, I would argue that is probably the most crucial part of being a good producer.
Right.
Like something that I've recently started doing, that I've started doing for myself because my wife gave me the idea for my own songs, and she's a wealth of knowledge, so that really helped, is that I've started when I work with an artist, and unless they come in really, really sure and are like straight away telling me what the song is about, I get them to write down the story of their song. And I essentially, when they're sitting there trying to both like we're adjusting the music, or they're trying to craft extra lyrics for the second verse, or you know, working on the bridge, or thinking about like the vocal tone they want to use for this extra vocal layer. Every time they second guess themselves, I'm like, well, let's refer back to the story of the song and let that influence the decision that you're going to make. Because, you know, this is your song. Like the whole point of me being a producer, I'm a vehicle to create the best version of your music. It's not my music. It's your music, and you're paying me. Like, yeah, we might develop a great relationship, and ideally, that's really cool. A lot of my clients have become really close friends. But I am here to serve you, so let's take your story and make it fantastic.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times when I say to artists, I'm like, oh, write down the story of your song. Sometimes they're like, oh, there isn't a story, and I'm like, well, then actually, let's put a pin right there. If you don't have a story behind your song, then why are you making this song? Like, I understand, you know, I've got a career and it's nice to earn money as a producer.
Yeah.
But if someone's coming in to do a song and they don't have a story behind their song, do they have a song?
It's very difficult to, you know, obtain things like emotion into vocals without having some emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I find vocals the most difficult thing to write. And so I don't envy the vocal writer or the lyric writer who doesn't have to be the vocalist. But without emotion connected to it, it's very difficult to put yourself in the right headspace to deliver an amazing performance. You'll very rarely have, an amazing band that has okay lyrics that performs really amazing, has an amazing performance. Usually the most popular bands have something about the vocal that people can connect with. Without emotion connecting you to your own lyrics, how can the listener connect to it?
Well, I mean, they can't.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
that's
the
it.
thing,
Yeah,
And I mean, unless you're creating instrumental music, which, by the way,
It's
there's still journey and story, and there's still a vocal in that, but the vocal just gets taken over by a musical instrument or a part or a piece or a motif or anything along those lines.
Amazing. All right, here we go. Episode 7. Spike Leo was my guest for episode 7. This little clip that we talk about is going into marketing and why that is so important and why a lot of bands fail at marketing, and as well as that, as how he started his marketing implementation in his business. So let's get into it. This is from episode 7 with Spike Leo.
I realized very quickly that if I want to have a chance in this industry, I need to be business savvy. And I need to think about branding and marketing. Most people in the industry, artists and music producers alike, even more so artists, are not thinking about branding or marketing. They're not thinking about pushing out content on the daily and about quantity and quality. And, if you're putting out a song every 3-4 months, it's like telling, so many artists put out a song and they're waiting to blow up and be famous. It's like getting a needle and throwing it in a haystack and telling all your friends, okay, go find it because it's the nicest. It's a gold needle. It's worth $20,000. It's the best needle you've ever. If you throw 100 needles in a haystack, someone's probably going to find it. And there's many bands I didn't find out about until 7 years later. And I was like, wow, these guys are dope. So what's the problem there? And then the band breaks up. So the problem is marketing.
Yeah.
It's not that you guys are not good. It's not that you're not an awesome music producer. It's not that you're not an awesome artist. It's that you're not working hard enough to figure out how can I get it to the right ears? Who's my demographic? How do I get it out there? So when I started, you start small. I was at the time on Gumtree. It was free to advertise. I was in my house with my studio. I took a picture of another studio and put it up there, just advertising because I didn't really have a picture of my studio yet. Which I'm not recommending doing, but that's what I did. I just Googled studio images and I wrote a little ad. I think I was about 2-3 years in. I started getting my confidence. I was like, I want to start trying to do some songwriting. I started formulating my songwriting plan of how I like to songwrite. And it started there. And then slowly, I started getting people coming through who are at my level. And we negotiated a cash payment price. And over 6 to 12 months, I started getting a wad of cash in my jeans drawer, under my jeans. I'm like, shit, I'm making cash here. So I started upgrading my studio because that's what we do. And getting better equipment. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I started putting some money into the Gumtree ads to make sure that I was the top ad. So Gumtree, Craigslist, probably over in the States or whatever. But it's it was a free site. And then I was like, okay, there's Facebook advertising. And I slowly started experimenting with that. And then I went ham on Facebook marketing. I went crazy, and I was getting lots of inquiries. As I started getting more money, I was pumping it into marketing. I was on Airtasker getting my logo designed, branding. I started building a website. That was quite a bit later in. And my website's 3-4 years in the making. It's you never stop developing your website.
Yeah. Yep.
So it started from there, but I started getting obsessed with marketing and all that stuff. And I was getting a good dose of inquiries through Facebook at the time when it was affordable. It's not affordable anymore. But we can talk about TikTok and how affordable that is, because if you remind me, I'll tell you about TikTok advertising.
Well, this is the thing
second.
with the mentioning Gary Vee. You know, he always says it's not about the platform. There's always going to be new platforms. It's how you utilize them, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
And people don't like changing. Hey, they like to they get comfortable, and and you got to change and move with the time. So it's like Gumtree and Facebook was good for me then. Now I've had a shift in what I want to do. So now I'm going hard on TikTok. I'm doing like 3 to 5 posts a day. I'm going to go back to Instagram. I've just like, if you see behind me, I've got like, no one's going to see because it's a podcast, but basically I got like a small setup. I'm going to do a YouTube channel and lighting and camera, blah, 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 blah. But content is key. Content is king. You know, video, whatever you can do, you just got to put it out there.
This is going out as video.
Sure. No one's going to know who you are if you don't put yourself out there. And for a lot of people, that can be very intimidating. But everyone has something to offer. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. Even, you know, in the beginning stage, if you've been doing music production for 6 months, there's someone who's just started. So you have something to offer them. So at any stage in the game, you have something to teach and offer and wisdom from your personal life experience. It doesn't matter if someone's already said it, because you're going to say it different, and people are going to connect with your energy. They might not connect with his or hers.
All right, episode 8. This was with Darius Papak, who runs a business called Mix on the Move, where he converted a van into a recording studio, a production studio. It's a very, very cool chat. He's such a legend. So this clip, he actually talks about his mixing process and how he uses the technique of separating his mix into different stages, and why he uses summing as a technique to get his mix to the right place. So let's get into it. Episode 8. This is with Darius Papak. Let's go. And so what does mixing look like to you? Are you mixing on the go? Is that part of your process when you're working with someone, or is it always after the fact?
I tend to prefer... I suppose my process always develops and it depends on the client, but I tend to prefer to leave the mixing for afterwards. But I'll take advantage of things like CLA guitars and CLA effects and Vox and all of these types of plugins to give some life and character and expression to the song, so that when we are tracking along to it, it's, you know, we can actually make sure that we are recording the next instrument correctly. Yeah. Because that's the biggest part for me in mixing, is getting it right on the way in.
Right,
you know?
right.
Once you got it right on the way in, it's just so much easier. When I first started, it was all like, oh, I'll just record this big fat guitar and then it doesn't sound right now, but I'll fix that later, you know? Sure. And it's like, if it doesn't sound right now with the drums, then it's not gonna without a lot of work, you know? Yeah. So I try to, I really focus in the process on just making sure the tones and, you know, any compression that I might be using on the way in and EQ and all of that stuff is right, and then, you know, then I can really focus on the mix after.
Yeah, and so what does the mix look like after? Do you always start with certain elements, or is it kind of depending on the song?
I think I've got a pretty standard level that I go through. So normally, first thing I want to work on is the kit, at least to a basic level. Like, I do basic treatment to everything down the line, starting with the kit and the kick, really, anyway.
Kick comes first.
One in the same. And so, you know, I like to sort of, anything that's going to be stereo that I'm not going to process too much on their own, like my overheads, I'll just put them into stereo and all these types of things. Just try to get my session worked out as well, my drums through a drum bus. I often separate my kick from my actual drum bus. Okay. In like heavy rock songs, because I really want to control that punch going through. And if I have it punching too much through the compressor in the drum kit, if I do have one, it can sometimes just
just sucks the life out
too
of
much.
it.
Yep. And then I'll, you know, set up my buses for my master chains. It's weird, like, because now I mix more in Logic than Pro Tools, but I'll just sum things. So I'll sum my some of my guitar tracks and stuff like that, and anything that I can bounce down straight away that I don't have to worry to, I will. You know, just
absolutely.
Stereo stem.
Well, it just makes that workflow of actual mixing a lot quicker.
Exactly.
Because you get all of that, I don't know if it's left brain or right brain, but one of them, you get that stuff out of the way first so that you're not having to do it during the mix. And
Exactly.
it just makes for a more creative and fluid mix session. So
more like, the thing that we got into mixing for was
Totally.
just mixing and having fun with it too a bit. So it's
100%.
like being able to set myself up to do that. Like
Yeah,
I'll always set up a pre-session. I'll do those main little things, get things treated the way I want, some transient shaping on the kicks and snares as well, just my appropriate low cuts and high cuts to everything. Right. And then I'll usually bounce all that down and take it into a separate session. This is obviously after all the comping and editing and all those types of things.
That's cool.
And then I'll bounce that down into a fresh session. So I feel like I've got, some now my tracks are really where I kind of want them. And it's a lot easier to balance them at that point.
That's
and
awesome.
then set my balance, get everything where I want it. And then I'll go through like some more proper treatment on the drums, setting out the snare verbs and things like that as well. The room verbs if I want it. Bass is always a pretty good one. Bass is I pretty much nail straight away. It's like I need to get that working. I get the kick and the snare pumping. I need my bass fitting in with that. Cool. Yep. Now I can fit the rest in,
Cool.
And then like vocals to bring the life out of it. And then I'll start focusing on like effects. I'll either shut that session down or like bounce down the stems of those sums so that I've got stereo stems of like all my guitars and leads. Take that into another session and then I can do all the, real
I
fun
can
effects.
imagine like that's probably more likely why you have that more of an organic sound is because you're focusing on the elements as a whole. You've once you've done the individual mixing of a kick drum and a snare drum and toms and overheads, now you've got a drum kit.
Yes.
And so you're mixing the drum kit.
Exactly.
That to me in my head makes sense that it leads to a more organic, band in a room type of a mix. Which is really great for, feeling like a song has life. That's, I think, a lot of the problem with, digital and really, really clean stuff. Not that I have a problem with it. It's more the problem of those sorts of things is it doesn't necessarily sound like a band in a room. So it can tend to lose that emotional impact. To me, that's what I think.
Agree.
But
exactly. Which is like my inspiration for it. Because I mean, like I say, I have no problem. I love all styles of music, and I don't care what the sound is, kind of thing. But sometimes I want to listen to a band, and I want it to feel like I'm listening to a band, and some people who are in that room actually playing guitars and drums and all of that sort of stuff.
100%. All right, hope you're enjoying this highlights episode of the podcast so far. This next clip is from episode 9, and this was with Sirpreme, who is a lo-fi producer from Melbourne. In this clip, he talks about how he has over 500, 600 beats sitting there waiting to be sent out to different artists, and how organization is really important and leads to a more professional relationship with the artists that he works with. So let's get into it. This is from episode 9 with Sirpreme. Let's go. I got a question on the beats, the amount of beats, right?
Yeah.
How do you keep it organized? And how do you know like where to go and find all of your beats? Do you keep them in specific folders?
So what I do is, before I moved, because I lived in WA for a few years, so I was away and I was working rural, so I would make beats when I could and stuff. But what I did prior to that was I was very regimented, so I always label them. Always give them a name that I resonate with the beat, then the BPM, and then I used to also put the key in there. So I'd be like, I don't know, what's that sound? 90 BPM, C major. And I'd have them, and then I'd put them into months.
Cool.
So then I could almost think back and be like, oh, okay, I remember like June I made this beat.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I started doing that. Then what I did was like I went on and I updated my iCloud. So I got Dropbox and iCloud. And that's for on the go. So every time I make something on my laptop, I email it straight away from my email address to my email address. Save it on my phone, put it in a folder. But then I found that it was getting too hard to remember stuff, and I'd have certain artists hit me up. And so as soon as an artist hits me up, I make a folder for them on Dropbox with their name and the date or the year. And then I'll go through my beats, and I've got like a lo-fi pack, R&B pack, trap pack. Then I've got like a random pack, so there'll be ones that are like kind of poppy, ones that might have like techno samples in it, like just things that I might be like, well, they might like it, and that's how I filter through. But it's always got the minimum requirement when I'm doing or bouncing a project. It always has to have the name and the BPM. Because I want an artist, I don't want to waste their time. I want to look and go 81, boom, bang.
It's crucial.
I know what it is straight away.
Yeah, the amount of times that I have come into a session with a rapper and they give me the beat and there's none of that information on there, and it just is such a pain in the ass to. And it's like, it's just not something that some people think about, but it's really, really important just to speed up the workflow
100%.
and get into it.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing worse than trying to sit there and figure it out when it could be done all in advance.
It's professionalism. That's
100%.
That's how I view it. Like,
Absolutely.
You can be as chilled as you want. Take your time. I don't care.
Yeah.
But be professional.
Well, I think the important thing for me as an engineer producer is the delivery of things, and the way I look at it is, how can I do something that people don't expect?
Yeah.
How can I give someone an experience that is seamless, that is like easy to navigate, that they don't have to ask questions, and also that they're just like, I didn't expect it to look like that.
Yeah.
Because then you stick in people's mind, and they go, if I don't get that experience with other people, they're more likely to come back, and
100%, 100%. And it's we're all, as much as it is a hobby or it's a it's like a pastime or whatever. At the end of the day, we it's still a job.
But you never know. That's the thing as well.
Like how do you get a phone call and be like, "Hey, man, can you roll through the studio, buddy? I don't know, Kid Leroy's here," and you'd be like, "Okay, cool." Imagine rocking up and just having a track that's called like Leroy, and then he's looking at it, and it's like, you got to put BPM counter on to work out what it is, and it's what a waste of time.
What a waste of time. And you just look like trash. Like
100%.
You just don't look like a professional person.
100%.
And when people get to a certain level, they don't need to work with people that don't have their shit together.
No, don't waste their time. And I've always viewed that. Don't waste anyone's time. Because time's precious. It's one thing we can't get back in our lives. So it might sound petty or it might sound like corny, but it's true. We can't get time back. So when you are utilizing someone else's time, make it worth their time. Whether it's a conversation, whether it's having drinks and having a laugh, always make it worth that person's time, because they can't get that back, and neither can you.
That's huge. I love that. All right, we are coming to the end. This is the last clip for today from episode 10, featuring Bonnie Knight, who is a live sound engineer and a studio sound engineer and producer. And this clip, we talk about the similarities and differences between live and studio, as well as how being a live sound engineer can set you up to actually be a more efficient studio engineer. So let's get into it. The last clip for today from episode 10 with Bonnie Knight. What then are some of the hardest things, do you think, about being a producer or an engineer in live and then in the studio? Because I think we haven't had many live engineers talking, so I would like to unpack that a bit.
I actually think that live engineering is really good. What's the word? Like training, I guess. As in, live circumstances are just so stressful and there's so much that can go wrong, and you really, particularly if you're like on a tour, you have to push through no matter what, and to an extent where maybe some of that stuff's a bit unhealthy. But once you've done that, you can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the reason why I stopped doing as much live stuff as I used to is purely the stress factor. And some people thrive on that. Some people just love being put in difficult scenarios and troubleshooting and try and figure it out. But that 1 or 2 hours before a gig, to me, is unbearable. Once the gig started and we're mixing and stuff, it's great. It's so enjoyable. But that hour or two before where, why can't I hear any subs or something like that, and you can't figure out the system shit, that shit just it's too much for me. But some people love that. Are you one of those people that just love those sorts of scenarios?
I would not say love. I do love problem solving. Once the problem's solved, I like problem solving, and I feel like, you pretty much always solve the problem, unless there's something broken. But
it's a good
that's
point.
not
It's a good point.
Anything you can do. But yeah, I think I definitely don't thrive off stress, but I think I am good at repressing stress, I guess, in a way that I don't, if something goes wrong, I'm not like, or at least outwardly.
Yeah. And does that, so you were saying that like really helps you from coming from that place going into the studio. Are there specific things that you can talk about that are similarities in the studio to live?
Yeah, I guess the problem solving, or just basic signal flow stuff. I feel like everyone I know that does live in studio, it's if you've had to patch a stage before, you can patch a studio much quicker or more efficiently. And I feel like actually the big one is dealing with people. Like you have to deal with so many people in a live sound scenario. So, and good days and bad days of artists and stuff. So that kind of skill is really translatable and beneficial in the studio.
Absolutely, and it's huge. Even it's amplified even more because it is a high stress environment. Well, it can be, like you said, depending on whether the artists are, drugs and alcohol influence things, sleep influences things, and people can react to those sorts of scenarios if things aren't going right. You have to be able to just figure it out because it's your job. And, you're right. Those sorts of times definitely set you up for the studio where it is much more of like, okay, we've got a little bit of time to figure it out. I don't want the artist to be sitting there thinking that I've got no idea what's going on, but it definitely allows you to take control, I think, a lot easier in those stressful situations that might occur in the studio. Well, there you have it. That was all of the highlights from the first 10 episodes of What's That Sound podcast. Thank you so much for watching this far. I can guarantee you we've got some amazing guests coming up in the future. If you don't already follow or subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're on all of them. So make sure you hit subscribe or follow so that you can stay up to date. You can keep in touch with us on Instagram. I am posting there every day pretty much, so you can watch the upcoming episodes. You can see clips from the current episodes and past episodes. I'll be posting any new information that I have about the podcast on there. Once again, thank you so much for your support. If you do want to send us a donation, you can send it to paypal.me/whatsthatsound. Otherwise, keep watching for free. I love you guys. Thank you once again. I'll see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.